Bloodhound has one of the most fascinating histories of any legend in Apex Legends, and I honestly don't think that's an exaggeration. Over the last 6 years, they've experienced just about every possible point on the balanced spectrum. They've gone from being one of the weakest legends in the game upon release, to becoming one of the most dominant characters in ALGS, to slowly fading into irrelevance, and now in Season 30, they've received one of the largest legend reworks ever. At first glance, this latest rework seems like Respawn's attempt to bring Bloodhound back into the spotlight, but after spending some time with it, I don't think the rework itself is the most interesting part of their story. Instead, I think it exposes a problem that has followed Bloodhound ever since Apex first launched. After 6 years of buffs, nerfs, a rework, and complete shifts in playstyle, I don't think Respawn has ever truly figured out what Bloodhound is supposed to be as a character, and because of that, I honestly don't know if Bloodhound will ever be a legend that's easy to balance going forward. To understand why, we have to go all the way back to Season 0. When Apex Legends first launched in 2019, Bloodhound was one of the game's original 8 legends and one of the faces of its marketing alongside Wraith and Gibraltar. The gameplay behind the character was very straightforward. Bloodhound wasn't meant to be a walking surveillance camera or stealth assassin, they were designed to be a true hunter. Every part of their kit reflected that idea. Their passive allowed them to follow footprints left behind enemy squads, their tactical gave them a brief scan of nearby opponents, and Beast of the Hunt transformed Bloodhound into a faster, more aggressive version of themselves that could quickly chase down enemies. On paper, the design made perfect sense. In practice, however, Bloodhound simply wasn't very good. Their tactical scan had a very narrow range, making it easy for enemies to avoid entirely, and made it unreliable to gather information. The passive was kinda cool and certainly fit the concept of the character, but tracking footprints rarely had much impact on the outcome of a fight. Bloodhound wasn't completely useless, but compared to other legends like Wraith, Pathfinder, and Lifeline from back then, there just wasn't much reason to pick Bloodhound. I think Respawn recognized this very quickly, and over the next several seasons, Bloodhound became one of the most consistently buffed legends in the game. Their scan became significantly larger, the duration of enemy reveals increased, tracker clues lasted longer, survey beacon access was added, and Beast of the Hunt could be extended through knockdowns, and scans became much faster while the ultimate was active. Each individual buff seemed reasonable on its own, but together they fundamentally changed how Bloodhound functioned. Without realizing it, Respawn had slowly transformed Bloodhound from a tracker into an information gathering machine. From Season 6 through 9, Bloodhound had become a staple of both ranked and professional play, largely because of how valuable information had become in Apex Legends. Rather than winning fights through raw damage or mobility, Bloodhound won fights by removing uncertainty. Before committing to a push, most teams have to make a series of calls. How many enemies are inside the building? Are they healing? Have they split across multiple floors? Is anyone already knocked? Is another squad nearby waiting to third party? Bloodhound answered every one of those questions with the press of a single button. This became even more powerful when paired with Bangalore, and these two had an incredible synergy. Bangalore's smoke could completely deny vision for one team, while Bloodhound's scans ignore that limitation entirely, allowing one squad to fight with perfect information while the others struggled to see anything at all. And if you didn't have a digi threat on your SMG or shotgun, then you were completely out of luck. It was Apex's first truly defining scan meta, and for a long period of time, there was almost no reason not to have a Bloodhound on your team. Fast forwarding to Season 10, Bloodhound slipped in pick rate a little bit, and it's not because Respawn nerfed Bloodhound or anything like that, it's because Seer came along and did Bloodhound's exact job, but a lot better. Even years later, I think Seer upon launch was probably the strongest legend Apex has ever seen. His heartbeat sensor, stuns, ultimate, and incredibly long-lasting scans completely overshadowed what Bloodhound brought to the table. Bloodhound wasn't suddenly weak, they were just simply outclassed by another legend who provided more information more consistently. Although Seer would eventually receive numerous nerfs, something important had changed. Around this time, Respawn seemed to realize that the real problem wasn't necessarily Bloodhound or Seer as individual legends, the problem was that wallhack style information simply wasn't healthy for Apex Legends. The more information one team received for free, the less room there was for creative positioning or surprise flanks. Although Respawn would buff Seer yet again, but we can talk about that in another video. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. That realization led directly into Season 13, where Bloodhound received perhaps the most important update in the Legend's history up until this time, the White Ravens. And to go along with the integration and further improvements of the White Raven over time, Bloodhound would also receive nerfs to other parts of his kit, such as Beast of the Hunt having a much larger cooldown. Looking back, I think this update represented Respawn's first real attempt to redefine what Bloodhound was supposed to be. Instead of relying primarily on scans, Bloodhound was encouraged to actively hunt enemy squads by following White Ravens across the map. Mechanically, it was a much healthier design because it rewarded tracking rather than constant wall hacks. The problem though was that it also changed what many players actually enjoyed about Bloodhound. People hadn't fallen in love with Bloodhound because they enjoyed following footprints across the map or tracking a raven. They enjoyed Bloodhound because scanning a building gave them complete confidence to take a fight. The healthier version of Bloodhound simply wasn't as immediately satisfying as the version that had dominated previous seasons. From this point forward, Bloodhound slowly began to disappear from the meta. Other legends started to be introduced that were incredibly powerful, such as Valkyrie that transformed how teams rotated around the map. Seer still remained relevant despite multiple nerfs. As Apex became increasingly focused on movement, macro rotations, and controlling utility, Bloodhound gradually lost their place. Fast forwarding all the way to the end of Season 29, Bloodhound became one of the least picked legends at the highest level of play. Respawn clearly understood that something needed to change, which brings us to the Season 30 rework. Rather than simply buffing numbers, Respawn chose to completely reinvent Bloodhound's identity. Beast of the Hunt was completely removed and entirely replaced with the Allfather's Cloak. White Ravens became easier to use, and the tactical returned to a snapshot style of scan reminiscent of Bloodhound's earliest versions. Before the update even released, much of the community assumed that this new ultimate was going to completely break the game. The idea of entire squads approaching while cloaked sounded incredibly difficult to balance. Instead, kind of the exact opposite happened. We're not too far removed from launch, and Bloodhound has one of the lowest pick rates in Masters and Predator ranks, with a small fraction of players choosing the legend. And honestly, I don't think it's necessarily because Respawn failed with this specific rework. I think it's because they've been trying to solve the same design problem for 6 years. Bloodhound has now existed in 4 different forms. They began as a tracker, evolved into Apex's defining wallhack legend, shifted towards a hunter with the White Ravens, and have now become a stealth-oriented legend with Allfather's Cloak. Each of those identities feels fundamentally different from the last, yet all of them are attempts to answer the exact same question. How do you make a hunter feel powerful without giving them unhealthy amounts of information? That's why I don't think Bloodhound's biggest challenge is numerical balance. Respawn can always increase cooldowns, adjust durations, or tweak abilities. Those changes are pretty easy to do. The real challenge is that Bloodhound's core mechanics tend to exist at extremes. When scans were too strong, Bloodhound dominated the game because information is one of the most valuable resources in Apex. Now, with the stealth becoming a central part of the kit, I think Respawn faces a very similar problem. If the cloak remains relatively weak, players simply won't pick Bloodhound over other recon legends. But if the cloak becomes too powerful, Apex risks entering another meta where fights are decided before players even realize an enemy team is approaching. And for me, that's what I think makes this rework so interesting. It's not that I think Bloodhound's new rework is particularly underpowered, it's that I think this rework has just been another chapter in a 6-year search for an identity that has never quite fit. It feels like Respawn hasn't just been balancing Bloodhound all this time. It seems like they've been trying to find the answer to a much more difficult question. What is Bloodhound actually supposed to be, and what is their best role in the game? I think it's a question that is still yet to be fully answered, and I'm pretty intrigued to see what Respawn does in the future. This is just my personal take on Bloodhound. I would love to know your take in the comments down below, and I would love to respond to your comments as well. If you are new to the channel, be sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe as well, and I'll see you all in the next video.